Kentucky basketball has a number of players that they could end up starting at point guard this upcoming season, but it's looking like Lamont Butler, transfer from San Diego State, is going to get the nod at PG1.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we're going to be taking a look at some recent comments from Kentucky guard Lamont Butler. As we suspected, it looks like he is going to be starting at point for the Wildcats. Also on today's episode, going to take a look at a Sea of Blues rotation, starting lineup, depth chart breakdown for Mark Pope and the Wildcats this upcoming season. What do we think about Brandon Garrison and his involvement in the rotation at center? And then to wrap up the show, we've got a very bold prediction from a listener here that we're going to dive into. Thank you so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. And if you are watching on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to the show. And if you are listening on podcast, I would also appreciate it if you subscribed there as well. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. Lamont Butler, it's looking like we'll start at point guard for the Kentucky Wildcats this upcoming season. Now, it's been a bit of a debate here on the show as to whether or not Butler or West Virginia transfer Kerr Kriisa would get the nod as the starting point guard, but as we have said since the jump, it's looking like Butler will get that opportunity. Now, I know we've talked recently about the KenPom rotations and how Butler actually primarily played at shooting guard during his time with the Aztecs over at San Diego State, but we would assume that Butler would be playing point guard, especially with some of the talent that Kentucky has at the two, and it's looking like that's going to end up being true. According to KSR, an article written by KSR, an interview, I believe, with the folks over there at Kentucky Sports Radio, he talked a little bit about his relationship with Kerr, his relationship with the rest of the team, and how he sees his role playing out this upcoming season. He said, "When I'm out there, I'm just trying to win every time I'm playing. Put me out there wherever. I'll play center. I'm just trying to win. I think I'll be the lead guy, point guard, just trying to get guys shots because Pope's offense is so free-flowing and fast. I think we're going to have a great year, but on ball or off ball, I'm going to do my role." Obviously, Lamont Butler, well known for his game-winning shot in the Final Four of the NCAA tournament just a couple of seasons ago. One of the best defenders in all of college basketball, all Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year, actually, for the Mountain West Conference just last season. He's a very, very, very good defender, but we have had questions as to whether or not he would work better off ball for the Cats, and we've kind of resolved that here on the show by saying, well, statistically, he's not as efficient of a shooter as maybe some other players that you could play at the two, most notably Kobe Brea. So you would maybe like to give him a bit of an opportunity at point and let him be somebody that is able to distribute. Now, statistically, he didn't have an incredibly high assist rate, nor did he have a ton of assists per game during his time at San Diego State, but it was definitely enough to say he was a tweener in the backcourt and somebody that I believe Kentucky could end up relying on. Actually, if you want to go to KenPom here, Lamont Butler last season had a 21.6% assist rate, which was the exact same percentage as San Diego State starting point guard Darian Trammell. So you look at what Lamont Butler brings to the table from an analytics perspective, only shooting 31% from three, only shooting 47% inside the arc. Offensive rating is still decently high because of his ability to distribute the basketball. This is a very good guard that I think Kentucky, with a little bit of help outside of him, can mold him into a very solid starting point guard. You want to have somebody like Lamont out there, even if he's not the best shooter, for a couple of reasons. First of all, you have a ton of options on this roster when it comes to scoring the basketball. Now, I know that Butler, while he's not as efficient as some other guys, he can still score the rock, but you have several different guys that I think you're going to rely on more to try and go and get you some points and go and shoot the basketball, especially from outside the arc. Butler, I think, will end up kind of falling underneath some guys when it comes to touches, but in terms of, passing, when it comes to assist rate, when it comes to actual just raw assists, I think Butler's going to be up there. I think he's going to be able to get those opportunities. You don't really focus on that when you're talking about a guy like Butler. When you insert him into the lineup, what is the first thing that you see relative to some other players on this roster that makes you go, yep, he deserves to start? Outside of the seniority, obviously. It's the defense. It's the physicality. Kentucky lacked strength and they lacked aggression on defense at all positions last year, but at guard, it was shaky at best. Somebody like Lamont Butler to start as a senior, to go out there and just punch somebody in the mouth, not physically, obviously, but be able to go and assert himself defensively at the beginning of a game, and honestly, probably to close out a game as well. He is somebody that I want to have the ball in his hands. He has, up until this point in his career, proven that he is capable of starting at point for a program like Kentucky, especially in a system like Kentucky's, as he even said to KSR. If I'm not mistaken, he also discussed his relationship with Kerr Kriisa as well. He said, I think we'll be great together. I've been hanging out with Kerr a lot since we've been here. We're starting to gain chemistry there, going to play beside each other and go out there, do our best. So playing beside each other makes me think, hey, maybe Kentucky wants to work Kriisa a little bit at shooting guard. They've got several options in their backcourt, especially with newcomer Travis Perry being an interesting factor here, where you can kind of rotate these guys in and out of point and shooting guard and feel comfortable doing so. I like this announcement. I'm so happy to see that Butler is able to kind of take charge here and be confident in his role. Obviously, he should be, especially given his accolades in college basketball. So let me know what you think in the comments below. What do you think about Lamont Butler starting at point guard for the Kentucky Wildcats? I'm very excited about it. All right. I want to talk a little bit more about this rotation in general. Asia Blue put out a very interesting article talking about their opinions on this rotation. They left a couple of guys out, and I want to specifically focus on Brandon Garrison. I don't think he's getting enough love. Before we dive into that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Game Time. MLB games have been phenomenal to go to so far this season. As a Braves fan trying to climb back into the race against the Philadelphia Phillies in our division, it's been super, super fun to be able to go to Truist Park and watch some games. And there is no better place to get tickets for all Major League Baseball games than Game Time, because they are an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. They make getting tickets faster and easier, and prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. They have last-minute deals. You can save up to 60% on buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater events near you, all sorts of events you can find over on Game Time. It is an excellent app. It is very, very quick and easy to use. You can get in, get out. They've got all-in prices, views from your seat, and then their lowest price guarantee. They take the guesswork out of buying tickets. If you find tickets actually in the same section in row 4 less elsewhere, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. There is no better place to go find your Major League Baseball tickets than over at Game Time. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, continuing along here on the Friday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. Again, I appreciate you guys checking out the show today. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast feed, I would greatly appreciate it if you did so. And if you have any bold predictions for this upcoming Kentucky basketball season, I would highly encourage you, strongly encourage you to leave those bold predictions in the comments below, or you can find me on Twitter at LockedOnUK. All right, A Sea of Blue, SB Nation's Kentucky site, put out an interesting article yesterday about Kentucky basketball and their projected lineups. And they went about this in an interesting manner. They have a starting lineup, a closing lineup for offense, and a closing lineup for defense. This is a very well put together article. It was written by Ethan DeWitt. If you want to go check this out again over at aseaofblue.com, shout those guys out. This is a very interesting piece here, and I want to kind of look at what they have to say about these different rotations and point out the fact that, hey, there's one guy here that's kind of missing that I believe deserves some attention. We'll start here with the starting lineup. Lamont Butler at point guard. Kobe Brea, the transfer from Dayton, at shooting guard. We've had some conversations as to whether or not Kentucky would want to play him at the 2 or the wing. Probably going to end up working best at the 2. An elite shooter, statistically the best shooter in all of college basketball last year. Jackson Robinson at the 3. Andrew Carr at the 4. And Amari Williams at the 5. Brea, Robinson, and Carr form a very lethal trio of three-point shooters. And if you want to slide Kerr Kriisa in there at point, that's a very, very, very tough offense to stop. You have a dominant big man on both sides of the ball. You have 4 players that statistically are some of the best catch-and-shoot guys in the nation, specifically Kobe Brea being legitimately the best in the nation, and Kriisa being in the 99th percentile of catch-and-shoot players a season ago. That's very, very tough to stop. That's a good starting lineup. You look at the closing lineup that Ethan DeWitt wrote. Kerr Kriisa, Brea, Robinson, Otega Owe, and Carr as the closing lineup for specifically an offensive style of play. And this is what DeWitt has to say. This is the most intriguing lineup to build out at the moment. The question surrounding it all is, would Coach Pope run a 4-guard offense? I'm not sure, but it would be fun, especially with this projected lineup. You have 3 guys who shot above 35% from deep last season and create a lineup that can run the floor and score at will. Also, if Travis Perry and Colin Chandler can come in and impress quickly, their offensive skill sets are one that match up pretty perfectly with the style of play that this new Kentucky team will look towards. I agree with everything that Ethan says here. This is a very fun, dangerous lineup, but you notice there, that's a 4-guard lineup: Kriisa, Brea, Robinson, Owe, and then you have Andrew Carr at the 5. And I know that we talked about this on a recent episode. I went through some Google Sheets with you guys, looking at some different things I put together about how this rotation will work out specifically with different positions and how many touches these guys will be getting per game. Carr, if you missed that episode, believe it or not, actually played a portion of his minutes at center for Wake Forest last season, and he averaged 1.5 blocks per game in the process. He's a good defender. He can protect the rim. He can play at the 5 in any system. And to be honest with you, if Kentucky didn't have Brandon Garrison, they would look to a guy like Andrew Carr, or they would be searching for a freshman to reclassify and round out this year's team, a Malachi Marino, somebody like him, a Jamie Vinson maybe. But you're looking for somebody to add to your front court at that point. Thankfully, you have Andrew Carr and Brandon Garrison and Amari Williams, all different guys that you can rotate in at the 5. Now, I agree. If you're going for an offensive lineup, Kriisa, Brea, Robinson, Owe, and Carr would be very, very lethal. And to be honest with you, I don't really think the question as to whether or not it's a 4-guard lineup really matters, because Brea and Robinson are both 6'6", 6'7". Otega Owe is 6'5". So if you want to just do this positionless style of basketball, I think it's fine, because if you're just working by height, Kriisa is 6'3". You can put Owe at the 2 at 6'5". You can put Robinson or Brea at the 3 at 6'6", 6'7", and then you have a 6'6", 6'7" power forward with a 6'11" center. Your height is fine. You just have a bunch of different wings that you're kind of mixing and matching here in the middle of your rotation. I think that that's fine. This would be very entertaining to watch, I might add. And then you get to the defensive lineup. Lamont Butler, Jackson Robinson, Otega Owe, Andrew Carr, and Amari Williams. And this is what Ethan DeWitt has to say about Carr specifically. For Carr, his defensive numbers aren't as good as his offensive stats, but he averaged 1.5 blocks per game last season for Wake Forest. He continues talking about the center rotation. The wild card here would also be Brandon Garrison. The Oklahoma State transfer big man has shown some solid promise as a defender, and if he continues to grow, he could take over Carr's spot, pairing him next to Williams to get a key stop. I think Garrison lacks the versatility to comfortably put him at the 4. And this is something that Kentucky, under Coach Cal, tried to do throughout his time here, is force two centers into a five-man lineup. And unless one of those guys can either handle the ball, pass very well, or shoot, do one thing outside of dominate at the rim very well, you're going to lack some versatility. You're going to see some different spacing, some clutter maybe, and your offense is going to start to head in a different direction. And I won't say it's necessarily a unsuccessful direction if you want to put two centers out there. Kentucky's had success with it for sure. But with this specific team, with this rotation, I think Williams, without a doubt, is your guy at the five. He's a three-time conference defensive player of the year. We're not questioning that. But if we're going to rotate somebody in defensively, if we're going to add somebody to this rotation, I genuinely believe that Brandon Garrison needs to be discussed more as somebody that can come off the bench and play at the five for Kentucky, I think more often than Andrew Carr will. I expect Brandon Garrison to, if not this year, next season, to have a very, very solid season for the Cats. I think that this is a future NBA player. I think he's got loads of potential. You saw the moments at Oklahoma State. You saw how good he is on the offensive end in pick and roll situations and as a cutter. You saw his post moves. You saw his rebounding. You saw his ability to defend the rim on the defensive side of the ball. He is physical. He is smart, and he's got the ability to take the next step. I think instead of letting him sit on the bench and letting guys like Carr operate at the five when you could really, really do damage with him at the four, I think bringing somebody like Garrison into this rotation and allowing him to develop and learn throughout the course of this season is going to be more important for Kentucky's long-term success. And also, frankly, I think it would be more beneficial to them this year. Again, this is not a knock on Carr. I just truly believe with his ability to shoot and handle the ball a little bit, you would be better served playing him at the four and letting somebody like Garrison operate at the five coming in off the bench, because it allows you to maintain your versatility, right? It allows you to continue to do what you want to do, which is get out, spread the floor, and take a ton of shots. And look to somebody like Garrison in quick pick and roll situations when you're trying to get some things going at the rim. I like this article. I like the thought process here. I really do think that somebody like Garrison needs to get more attention and some more love heading into this year, because I think he's really underrated. You don't just sort of discard a former McDonald's All-American, especially one that showed some legit promise in a really tough situation last year at Oklahoma State, where he sort of had to be the guy at center at times for OSU. So I think that should just be noted. Also, something else that I think should be noted here is the fact that you didn't see Ainsley Alminor's name mentioned at all in that article. Again, if we're talking about versatility, Alminor, who was pretty much the best three-point shooter on FDU's roster a season ago, why wouldn't you want to slide him into this rotation, especially if you're looking for an offensive lineup? Statistically, Alminor, probably a better volume shooter than Carr was. You can run a three-guard lineup, and I think for that fourth spot at power forward, you could put Alminor in at some point this season. Kentucky's got loads of really good catch-and-shoot players. I think that they should utilize them. So let me know what you think about that in the comments below. All right, we've got one more thing here to wrap up the show. Let's take a look at an extremely bold prediction from one of our Discord users talking about how Kentucky will finish this season, possibly a perfect regular season, but what will they do in the postseason following a 31-0 start, so to speak? Before I do that, though, I do want to remind you guys, if you want to check out the Locked On Kentucky Discord, you can check out my Twitter at @LanceDawe_. You can actually see it here. Oh, I'm pointing the wrong way. You can actually see it here on YouTube. You can see LanceDawe_. That is my Twitter/X account if you want to go check that out. If you'll go and look, I have the Discord link pinned to the top of my profile. So that's a place you can go to join the Discord. It's free. It's a place for all of us to chat about all things going on with Kentucky basketball, football, baseball, anything on your mind here going on with Big Blue Nation. It's a place for you to come and chill. Tons of you guys are already in there asking questions, having conversations about different things. I've really enjoyed getting to interact with you guys. So again, at @LanceDawe_ on Twitter. Pinned at the top of my profile is a link to join the Discord. All right, wrapping up the Friday edition of Locked On Kentucky. We've talked about Lamont Butler. We've talked about Brandon Garrison. Let's discuss here an extremely bold prediction from one of our Discord users. If you have not seen for the past few days, I've been going over some bold predictions that I asked you guys for. I asked you to give me a bold take for this upcoming Kentucky basketball season, and I would rate that bold prediction on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 being as bold as it gets, 1 being pretty lukewarm, pretty cold take. But this one is scorching hot because of 2 specific factors that come into play for the Wildcats in their schedule. Marty Montgomery from our Discord says his bold prediction is 31-0 in the regular season, but no postseason wins at all. Undefeated, trouncing everyone in the regular season, just steamrolling everybody, heading into the postseason, and then 0 postseason wins. Do you know what this would do to this fan base emotionally if you curb stomped every single team you faced? And keep in mind, Kentucky's going to have to face the likes of Gonzaga, Duke, Clemson, Ohio State, Louisville. That's just in the non-con. And then you get to places like Auburn, Alabama, Tennessee, Florida, Ole Miss, Mississippi State. In your conference slate, some of those teams you have to play multiple times. A large portion of those teams you have to play on the road. If you beat every single one of them, and then you lose in the SEC tournament first game, first of all, that would already begin to send this fan base into a bit of a tailspin. But at 31-1, there's no world where Kentucky is not just a 1 seed, but there's no world where they're not the top overall seed heading into the tournament. And you know what that means. Kentucky would have to play a 16 seed and lose. And I'm pulling up Joe Lenardi's bracketology. He updated this on June 18th, so just a couple of days ago. The 16 seeds that are projected right now: Howard, Wagner, Navy, Texas Southern, Morehead State, Quinnipiac, if that's how you pronounce that name. I may be butchering that. And then you look at the 15 seeds: South Dakota State, Akron, Lipscomb, Fort Wayne. You would more than likely see Kentucky go down to one of those teams. If Kentucky, just out of the blue, heading into the tournament, like definitively a Sweet 16 or Elite 8 lock in most of America's mind, and then you look up and see that they've lost to Texas Southern or Howard or Navy, I mean, I think the fan base would accept the fact that it was year 1 with Mark Pope and things went well, like really well, with a roster that was put together in a month and a half, mind you. And that things will be better moving forward with more recruiting and more stability. I think also a portion of this fan base would say, what did we get rid of the old guy for? Because all that we want is success in the postseason. Then we'd be going on 6 straight years that Kentucky would have failed to make the Sweet 16. We have one postseason win since the 2018-19 season. I was against Providence. If you're looking at the last 3 years of Kentucky basketball, that win against Providence, that team might have been, in terms of talent, if we want to go that direction, it might have been the worst team. It might have been the worst put together team in terms of roster construction, because you had that first year with Shibwe and everybody sort of clicked, right? Then you had the second year, Shibwe returns, certain players leave. A lot of guys get injured. Severe Wheeler is going through some issues. Cason Wallace has to step up at point. How do you feel about Jacob Toppin and Chris Livingston? It's just you've got different guys that don't really work different spots, and you're injured again. And then you head into this season, and you've got 3 7-footers on your roster. You have 4 different guys that may end up getting drafted in your backcourt. You're benching 2 lottery picks, which we're not getting into that today. You're really, really good from top to bottom in terms of talent. Like on paper, that was the worst constructed team of the last 3 seasons. And yet they won a tournament game. And these kids from this past season couldn't. Now, a lot of it you put on the coaching staff and their inability to get those guys to perform at what we expect to be at a higher level. And then obviously St. Peter's happened, and we know what happened with that. To go undefeated, first of all, is borderline impossible in today's college basketball. And then to do that and then also not win a single game. That includes the SEC tournament, by the way. That would be... I would like to live in that world just to see an undefeated regular season. I would not want to live in a world where we lose to like a Wagner or a Navy. I would love to see, not to live it, but to see the fan base's reaction to that. I think that would be very entertaining for a brief moment, just kind of see in a bubble, see how that would go. I'm giving that a solid 10. That's a solid 10 out of 10. There is no beating that. That is an extremely hot take here, a bold take from Marty Montgomery, and I appreciate the submission. It's a very, very fun thought experiment. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hey, you can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK. You can follow me on Twitter at @LanceDawe_, and you can follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all on Monday for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and God bless.